Benjamin Cavanaugh's first thought upon entering the grand ballroom of the Marriott Hotel was that no one would recognize him. 10 years could change a person physically at least. The success that had transformed him from a struggling economics student into a financial powerhouse hadn't altered his preference for anonymity, which was precisely why he'd avoided every previous reunion invitation from Westlake University. But something about the 10th anniversary had weakened his resolve, perhaps nostalgia or simple curiosity about the roads his former classmates had taken. He adjusted his plain blue tie, a deliberately understated choice compared to the designer suits he typically wore for board meetings at Cavanaugh Investments. Tonight, he was just Ben, not Benjamin Cavanaugh, the 32-year-old billionaire whose face occasionally graced the financial sections of newspapers. He'd even left his usual security detail at home, wanting the authentic experience of blending in anonymously with the crowd. The ballroom buzzed with conversation and laughter as former students reconnected. Circular tables adorned with blue and gold centerpieces, Westlake's colors filled the space, while a banner proclaiming Westlake University, Class of 2013, a decade of excellence, hung above a small stage. A jazz quartet played in the corner, providing a sophisticated soundtrack to the evening. Benjamin grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing server and positioned himself strategically at a table near the back of the room. He'd chosen his seat carefully close enough to observe, but far enough to avoid unwanted interaction. His plan was simple: watch, reminisce silently, maybe exchange pleasantries with anyone who approached, and leave early with his identity intact. "Is this seat taken?" A melodic voice broke through his thoughts. Benjamin looked up to find a woman gesturing to the chair beside him. Her chestnut hair fell in elegant waves past her shoulders, framing a face that seemed vaguely familiar, yet impossible to place. She wore a forest green dress that complemented her hazel eyes, which crinkled slightly at the corners as she waited for his response. "No, please," he said, gesturing to the empty chair. She settled beside him, placing her clutch on the table. "These events are always so overwhelming at first, aren't they? I'm Rachel, by the way. Rachel Thornton." The name struck a chord of recognition. Rachel Thornton. They'd shared a few classes, though they'd never been close friends. She'd been an art history major, if he remembered correctly, passionate and opinionated during class discussions. He'd admired her from afar, the way she'd fearlessly challenged professors when she disagreed with their interpretations. "Ben," he replied simply, extending his hand. "Ben C." Rachel's handshake was firm, confident. "Just Ben? No last name?" Very mysterious. Her smile was teasing, but her eyes showed genuine interest. "It's a reunion. I figure first names work fine," he replied, returning her smile. "Fair enough, just Ben." She sipped her champagne, surveying the room. "So what department were you in? I'm trying to place you, but I'm drawing a blank." "Economics. Mostly kept to myself." Benjamin was surprised at how easily the half-truth flowed. He had indeed been an economics major, but he hadn't exactly been invisible on campus. As student body treasurer and eventual valedictorian, his name had been well known. But the Benjamin Cavanaugh of college days had sported thick glasses and an unfortunate attempt at facial hair. Laser eye surgery, a refined fitness regimen, and a completely different wardrobe had effectively transformed him. "Ah, that explains it. I was art history practically lived in the Hamilton building. Our paths probably didn't cross much." "I think we had contemporary ethics together. Sophomore year?" Benjamin offered, unable to resist the small connection. "Professor Winters?" Rachel's eyes widened. "Yes, that class was intense. I remember a heated debate about corporate responsibility." She paused, studying his face more carefully. "Wait, were you the guy who argued that businesses had an ethical obligation beyond their shareholders?" Benjamin felt a flutter of nervousness. She was getting close. I might have contributed to that discussion. You did more than contribute. You practically demolished the opposing viewpoint. She laughed. I remember being impressed most of the business and econ majors took the profit-first position. He shrugged, uncomfortable with her accurate recollection. Just playing devil's advocate, probably. Rachel looked unconvinced, but mercifully changed the subject. So what have you been up to since graduation? Still in the economics world? Financial services, he answered vaguely. Nothing particularly exciting. What about you? Did you pursue art history? I did, actually. Her expression brightened. I'm a curator at the Metropolitan Museum now, specifically in American decorative arts. Took a winding path to get there, grad school at Columbia, a few years at smaller galleries, then finally landed at the Met 3 years ago. That's impressive, Benjamin said sincerely. The Met is world-class. Thank you. She seemed pleased by his genuine interest. It's challenging but incredibly fulfilling. I get to work with beautiful objects that tell stories of our past. She paused, taking another sip of champagne. Though I suspect financial services is selling yourself short. What do you really do, Ben C? The directness of her question caught him off guard. Before he could formulate a suitably vague answer, the MC's voice boomed through the room, announcing dinner would be served shortly, followed by the evening's program of speakers and awards. Saved by the bell, Rachel said with a knowing smile. But don't think I'm letting you off that easily. As servers began bringing out salad courses, more alumni joined their table. Benjamin was relieved when the conversation naturally shifted to group reminiscences about notorious professors and campus scandals. He contributed occasionally, but mostly observed, particularly Rachel, who seemed to know everyone and had a gift for drawing out stories and laughter. He found himself captivated by the animated way she spoke, using her hands expressively, leaning forward when particularly engaged in someone's story. There was a warmth and authenticity about her that he rarely encountered in his current world of high finance, where calculated moves and strategic relationships dominated. The evening progressed through dinner and into the awards portion, where various alumni were recognized for professional achievements and contributions to the university. Benjamin tensed when the MC announced the Distinguished Alumni Award, knowing his name had been on the shortlist. He'd declined the honor weeks ago, citing a scheduling conflict, but still felt a twinge of unease as the actual recipient, a prominent surgeon, made her way to the stage. I thought for sure they'd recognize you, Rachel whispered beside him. Benjamin nearly choked on his water. What? Just kidding, she laughed, misinterpreting his reaction. You look so serious watching all these achievers. I was just wondering if you were secretly hoping to be called up. Definitely not, he assured her, relaxing slightly. Public speaking isn't my thing. Mine either, though I've had to get better at it for museum events. She glanced around the room. Speaking of which, I need to step away for a moment to say hello to my old advisor. Will you save my seat? Of course, Benjamin replied, watching as she gracefully navigated through the crowd. He realized with surprise that he was actually enjoying himself, largely due to Rachel's company. There was something refreshing about being treated as just another alumnus rather than the billionaire whose presence typically altered the dynamic of any room he entered. When the formal program ended, the dance floor opened, and the quartet was replaced by a DJ playing hits from their college years. Rachel returned, slightly flushed from her conversations across the room. Dance with me? She asked, extending her hand as the opening notes of a slow song filled the air. Benjamin hesitated. Dancing meant closer proximity, increased chance of recognition, but something in her expectant expression made refusal impossible. Fair warning, I'm not very good. Neither am I, she admitted as he took her hand. But it's a reunion. We're supposed to embarrass ourselves a little. They moved to the dance floor, and Benjamin placed his hand tentatively on Rachel's waist, keeping a respectful distance between them. Despite his protest, years of formal charity galas had actually made him a competent dancer, though he deliberately kept his movements simple. "You're better than you claimed," Rachel observed, following his lead easily. "You caught me. I was lowering expectations." "Smart strategy." She smiled up at him. "So, mysterious Ben, are you going to tell me anything real about yourself? Or am I dancing with a complete enigma all night?" The question was asked lightly, but Benjamin sensed genuine curiosity beneath it. "What would you like to know? Where do you live now? Married? Kids? Hobbies? You know, the basic reunion questions everyone else is answering without all this secrecy." "New York," he replied, deciding to offer some truth. "No spouse, no kids. I work too much for either, probably. As for hobbies?" He paused, realizing how little time he dedicated to personal interests. "I sail when I can. Read historical biographies. Nothing extraordinary." "New York? We're practically neighbors then," Rachel said, looking pleased. "Which neighborhood?" "Upper East Side," he answered, then quickly added, "What about you?" The same questions. "I'm in Brooklyn Park Slope, also unmarried, though I was engaged briefly after graduation. Ended amicably enough, but taught me I'd rather be alone than with the wrong person." She shrugged slightly. "As for hobbies, I paint when I'm not surrounded by other people's art, and I rescue houseplants from friends who can't keep them alive." "A plant rescuer," Benjamin smiled. "Noble work." "Someone has to do it," she laughed. The song ended, transitioning to something faster. "Another dance?" Before Benjamin could answer, a tall man with a receding hairline approached them, his face lighting up with recognition. "Rachel Thornton. I thought that was you," he exclaimed, then turned to Benjamin with a friendly nod. "And wait, Ben? Ben Cavanaugh? Is that really you?" Benjamin felt a cold rush of exposure. Mark Stevens had been his roommate sophomore year. There was no way to deny recognition. "Hey, Mark," he said, extending his hand with forced casualness. "Good to see you." Rachel looked between them, her expression shifting from confusion to realization. "Cavanaugh? As in, Cavanaugh Investments?" Mark laughed, oblivious to Benjamin's discomfort. "The one and only. Man, I knew you'd do well, but seeing your face in Fortune magazine was something else. How's life treating you, billionaire?" Benjamin winced at the word, avoiding Rachel's widening eyes. "It's been good. How about you, Mark? Still in software development?" As Mark launched into an update on his career, Benjamin risked a glance at Rachel. She was studying him with an unreadable expression, arms crossed over her chest. When Mark finally excused himself to greet other classmates, an awkward silence fell between them. "Billionaire?" Rachel finally said, her voice carefully neutral. "That's quite the detail to omit." Benjamin sighed. "I didn't want that to be the focus of every conversation tonight. I just wanted to be a regular alumnus for once." "So you lied to me." "I didn't lie," he protested. "I just simplified. Financial services is quite the simplification, for I run one of the largest investment firms in the country." Her tone was sharp, but there was hurt beneath it. "I'm sorry," Benjamin said sincerely. "I should have been more forthcoming. It's just—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound pathetic. "People treat me differently when they know. The whole dynamic changes." Rachel studied him for a long moment. "And how exactly did I treat you before I knew?" "Like a person," he answered honestly. "Not a net worth." Her expression softened slightly. "Fair enough. I can understand wanting normalcy." She tilted her head, considering him. "Though I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed I didn't recognize you. Your company helped fund our new American wing renovation last year." "I wasn't directly involved," Benjamin clarified. "My philanthropy team handles most donations." "Of course," Rachel nodded, a hint of irony in her voice. Your team. The DJ transitioned to another slow song, and Benjamin seized the opportunity. Dance with me again? Please? I promise no more half-truths. Rachel hesitated before relenting. Fine, Benjamin Cavanaugh, but I expect full disclosure this time. As they resumed dancing, Benjamin felt the careful distance he'd maintained all evening begin to dissolve. Rachel asked direct questions about his work, his company, his life in New York, and he answered honestly, relieved to drop the pretense. In turn, he learned more about her journey through the art world, her passion for democratizing access to cultural institutions, her small apartment filled with books and rescued plants. The evening passed more quickly than Benjamin expected. They danced, they talked, they shared dessert at their table while the crowd around them gradually thinned. When the DJ announced the last song at midnight, Benjamin realized he didn't want the night to end. Can I offer you a ride back to your hotel? He asked as they gathered their belongings. Rachel smiled. Let me guess you have a driver waiting? Actually, I drove myself tonight, part of the whole normal guy experience. Well, in that case, I accept. I'm at the Westin downtown. They walked together to the parking garage, conversation flowing easily now that the barriers had fallen. Benjamin led her to his car, a relatively modest Audi, rather than one of his usual luxury vehicles. No Lamborghini? Rachel teased as he opened the passenger door for her. I save that for when I'm trying to impress, he returned with a smile. The drive to her hotel was short, too short for Benjamin's liking. As he pulled up to the entrance, a comfortable silence settled between them. Thank you for the ride, Rachel said, making no immediate move to exit. And for an unexpectedly interesting evening. Even with the deception? Benjamin asked. Even with that. She turned to face him fully. Though I'm still not sure I've met the real Benjamin Cavanaugh. Just glimpses. I'd like the chance to change that, he said, surprising himself with his directness. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Before you head back to New York? Rachel considered him thoughtfully. Dinner with Benjamin Cavanaugh. Will I need to sign an NDA first? He laughed, appreciating her ability to challenge him with humor. No NDAs, just dinner. I know a place where no one will bother us. All right, she agreed after a brief pause. But I get to ask all the questions I want, and you have to answer honestly. Deal. Benjamin felt an unexpected lightness. I'll pick you up at 7? 7 works. She gathered her clutch and opened the car door, then paused. You know, for someone who wanted to stay anonymous, you're taking quite a risk asking out the museum curator who could easily Google everything about you before tomorrow night. I'm counting on you not to, Benjamin said. Where's the fun in that? Rachel smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Good night, Benjamin. Or do you prefer Ben? From you? Either is fine. Ben, then. She stepped out of the car but leaned back in before closing the door. For what it's worth, I liked you before I knew you were a billionaire. With that, she closed the door and walked into the hotel, leaving Benjamin sitting in his car with an unfamiliar feeling blooming in his chest, something like hope, mixed with a nervous anticipation he hadn't experienced in years. The next morning, Benjamin woke earlier than usual, his mind already racing with plans for his dinner with Rachel. He'd chosen a small, family-owned Italian restaurant on the outskirts of town, a place he'd discovered during his college years that had somehow survived the decade since. The owner, Salvatore, had no interest in social media or financial news, and would likely still see him as the hungry student who once washed dishes in exchange for meals during a particularly broke semester. After his morning run and a quick breakfast, Benjamin found himself doing something he rarely allowed second-guessing his wardrobe choices. His hotel suite closet held the usual selection of impeccably tailored suits he traveled with, but tonight called for something different. He finally settled on dark jeans and a charcoal sweater over a button-down casual enough to signal this wasn't a business dinner, but still refined. The hours crawled by as he handled unavoidable work calls and emails. His assistant, Kelly, sounded surprised when he declined a video conference with potential investors, instead delegating it to his CFO. "Everything all right, Mr. Cavanaugh?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. In 5 years, he'd never voluntarily missed an investment pitch. "Everything's fine, Kelly. Just have personal plans tonight that can't be rescheduled." "Personal plans," she repeated, clearly intrigued but professional enough not to pry further. "I'll inform the team. Enjoy your evening, sir." At precisely 6:55 p.m., Benjamin pulled up to the Westin. This time, he'd opted for the hotel valet service rather than seeking a parking spot. He texted Rachel that he'd arrived, then stepped out of the car to wait in the lobby. She appeared a few minutes later, wearing a simple burgundy dress with a light jacket, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail that somehow made her look both more casual and more elegant than the previous night. Benjamin felt a flutter in his chest as she approached, smiling when she spotted him. "Right on time," she observed. "Punctuality is a virtue in finance," he replied, then immediately winced. "And that sounded much less stuffy in my head." Rachel laughed. "At least you're self-aware. Most finance bros I've dated weren't." "You've dated many?" Benjamin asked, offering his arm as they walked toward the exit. "Enough to recognize the species," she said with a teasing smile, "though you're the first billionaire, I'll admit." "I'm honored to break new ground," he said dryly, leading her to his waiting car. The drive to the restaurant took them through familiar parts of the college town, past landmarks that triggered shared memories. The coffee shop where students pulled all-nighters, the bookstore that hosted famous authors, the park where spring graduation ceremonies were held. "It's strange being back," Rachel commented, watching the scenery pass. "Everything looks the same, but feels different." "Because we're different," Benjamin suggested, navigating through the quiet streets. "Are we? I'm not so sure. I think we're just more experienced versions of who we always were." She turned to him. "What about you? Does Benjamin Cavanaugh the billionaire feel fundamentally different from Ben the economics student?" The question made him pause. "Yes and no," he finally answered. "The core values are the same, but success changes how you move through the world, how much impact your decisions have, how people respond to you." "That sounds lonely," Rachel observed. Benjamin was struck by her perception. "It can be," he admitted, something he rarely acknowledged even to himself. Hence the anonymous act last night. They arrived at the restaurant, a small brick building with a faded sign reading Salvatore's, and warm light spilling from its windows. Inside, the decor was charmingly dated. Red checkered tablecloths, candles in Chianti bottles, black and white photographs of Italian landscapes on the walls. Salvatore himself, now sporting more gray hair than black, greeted them at the door. His eyes widened with recognition when he saw Benjamin. "Benny!" he exclaimed, embracing him with Italian exuberance. "It has been too many years." "Too many indeed, Sal," Benjamin agreed, returning the embrace. "How's business?" We survive. These fancy new restaurants come and go, but people always return to authentic food, no?" Salvatore's gaze shifted to Rachel. "And who is this beautiful lady?" "This is Rachel," Benjamin introduced her. "We attended Westlake together." "Ah, another smart one," Salvatore approved. "Come, I have your favorite table." He led them to a corner booth, partially secluded by a decorative wine rack. After insisting they accept a bottle of his best Montepulciano on the house, Salvatore left them with menus and a promise of special treatment for his special guests. "Benny, huh?" Rachel raised an eyebrow once they were alone. Benjamin felt himself flush slightly. "A college nickname I couldn't shake. I used to work here sometimes, dishwashing mostly." "The billionaire was once a dishwasher," she mused, opening her menu. There's a movie plot in there somewhere. Hardly cinematic, he demurred. Just a scholarship kid picking up extra cash. My family wasn't poor, but they weren't paying for extras either. Rachel studied him over her menu. So how does one go from dishwashing to billions? The abbreviated version, please. I don't need the full memoir tonight. Benjamin sipped his water, organizing the story in his mind. The short version is that I had an algorithm developed it for my senior thesis on predictive market behaviors. After graduation, I convinced 3 professors to invest enough for me to start a small fund. The algorithm worked better than expected. Word spread. More investors came. We expanded beyond the algorithm into broader investment strategies, and Cavanaugh Investments was born. You make it sound so simple, Rachel said. I'm summarizing a decade of 80-hour weeks, Benjamin acknowledged. There were plenty of setbacks and sleepless nights. But yes, the core story is straightforward. I built something that worked, and I scaled it. And now? Now the company runs itself to a large extent. I focus on strategic direction and major client relationships. We have about 300 employees globally, offices in 6 cities. Rachel nodded, absorbing this. Do you enjoy it? The question caught him off guard. People usually asked about growth projections or recent acquisitions, not whether he found satisfaction in his work. Most days, he answered honestly. I enjoy the puzzle of markets, the challenge of anticipating trends, but some aspects have lost their shine: the politics, the constant networking. Hence sneaking into your reunion incognito, she concluded. Exactly. Their conversation paused as a server brought appetizers, calamari, and bruschetta that Salvatore had apparently decided they needed without consulting them. The momentary break gave Benjamin a chance to shift focus. Enough about me, he said. Tell me about your work at the Met. What does a curator actually do day to day? Rachel's face lit up in a way that told him he'd touched on something she truly loved. She described her role with passion, researching provenance, designing exhibitions, working with conservators, writing catalog essays, negotiating loans from other institutions, educating donors. So many meetings, she laughed. If I'd known how much of my job would involve spreadsheets and email chains, I might have reconsidered art history altogether. The unsexy side of dream jobs, Benjamin commended. But you clearly love it despite that. I do, she confirmed. There's nothing like standing alone in a gallery after hours, surrounded by beautiful objects that have survived centuries. It puts everything in perspective. She took a sip of wine. What about you? What's the best part of your job? Benjamin considered this. The moments of clarity when you see a pattern emerge that others have missed, when you can anticipate a shift before it happens. And lately, the philanthropy. Using resources to effect actual change feels more rewarding than simply accumulating more capital. What kinds of causes? Rachel asked, seeming genuinely interested. Educational access is the primary focus: scholarships, early childhood education initiatives, financial literacy programs. But we're expanding into environmental sustainability and medical research too. He smiled slightly. And arts funding, as you noted yesterday. Their main courses arrived: osso buco for Benjamin and seafood risotto for Rachel, along with Salvatore's personal assurances that these remained his best dishes. The food was exceptional, rich with authentic flavors that chain restaurants could never replicate. As they ate, their conversation flowed naturally from professional lives to personal histories. Rachel spoke of growing up in Massachusetts with parents who were both teachers, her early love of drawing, her decision to pursue art history against her family's practical concerns. Benjamin shared stories of his childhood in Connecticut, his father's construction business, his mother's insistence that he develop interests beyond academics and finance. Do they understand what you've accomplished? Rachel asked. Your parents, I mean. Benjamin chuckled. My father still introduces me as my son, who does something with computers and money. They know I'm successful, but the scale escapes them, which is refreshing, honestly. I understand that, Rachel nodded. My parents still ask when I'm getting a real job with benefits, despite the fact that I work at one of the world's premier museums. Parents, Benjamin agreed with a smile. Impossible to fully impress, no matter what you achieve. They lingered over dessert tiramisu and espresso as the restaurant gradually emptied around them. Salvatore occasionally stopped by their table with more wine or a story about the old days, clearly delighted to have Benjamin back after so many years. When they finally prepared to leave, Benjamin insisted on paying despite Salvatore's protests that family doesn't pay. He left a tip that made the server's eyes widen, then guided Rachel outside, where the night air had turned cool and crisp. Thank you for dinner, Rachel said as they walked to his car. This was lovely. Better than you expected? Benjamin asked, hearing the hint of vulnerability in his own voice. Much, she admitted. I half expected some sterile five-star restaurant with too many forks and whispers about who you were. That's my normal Tuesday, he joked, opening the passenger door for her. This was better. The drive back to her hotel felt too short again. Benjamin found himself deliberately taking a longer route, extending their time together. Rachel noticed, raising an eyebrow at a particularly unnecessary turn, but said nothing, a small smile playing at her lips. When they finally reached the Westin, Benjamin parked instead of using the valet service. I'll walk you in, he said, coming around to open her door. They crossed the lobby slowly, both seemingly reluctant for the evening to end. At the elevator, Rachel turned to face him. What time do you fly back tomorrow? She asked. I have a noon flight to New York, Benjamin answered. You? 10 a.m., she said, looking regretful. Early meetings Monday. Benjamin nodded, disappointed but understanding. Rachel, I've really enjoyed these past 2 evenings. So have I, she said softly, surprisingly so. Would it be too forward to ask if I could see you again in New York? Dinner, perhaps? Or the theater? Rachel tilted her head, considering him. Why? Why? He repeated, confused. Yes, why? She pressed. Is it because you enjoyed my company, or because I'm one of the few women who met you without knowing your net worth first? The question stung, but Benjamin recognized its legitimacy. Both, if I'm being completely honest. The latter is rare in my life. But primarily the former, I find you fascinating, challenging, and incredibly easy to talk to. Rachel studied his face, seemingly searching for sincerity. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. Okay then. Yes, I'd like to see you again in New York. Relief and pleasure coursed through Benjamin. Great. I'll call you? You don't have my number, she pointed out with amusement. Right. Benjamin felt uncharacteristically flustered as he pulled out his phone. They exchanged contact information, their fingers briefly touching as they handed phones back and forth. Well, Rachel said as the elevator doors opened. Good night, Ben. Good night, Rachel. She stepped into the elevator, then turned to face him as the doors began to close. At the last moment, she put her hand out to stop them and stepped back into the lobby. I almost forgot, she said, moving closer to him. Before Benjamin could react, she leaned up and kissed him a gentle, brief touch of lips that ended almost as quickly as it began, leaving him stunned. Now good night, she said with a small smile, stepping back into the elevator. This time, she let the doors close between them. Benjamin stood motionless for a moment, then walked back to his car in a pleasant daze. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't racing with business strategies or investment opportunities. Instead, he was simply savoring the feeling of having met someone who saw him, really saw him beyond his wealth and status. Back in his hotel suite, Benjamin checked his phone and found a text from Rachel. "Thanks for dinner. Safe travels tomorrow. Looking forward to New York." Simple words, but they made him smile. He replied, "The pleasure was all mine. Flight details tomorrow? Maybe we can share a car service to the city if timing works." Her answer came quickly. "Perfect. Text me when you land." Benjamin fell asleep that night with an unfamiliar lightness in his chest and the lingering sensation of Rachel's kiss on his lips. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Benjamin woke to several urgent emails from his executive team. A major client was threatening to withdraw a significant investment, demanding a personal call with Benjamin before the markets opened Monday. His assistant had already rescheduled his flight to an earlier departure, 8:30 a.m., giving him barely enough time to shower and pack. He texted Rachel while rushing to get ready. "Change of plans, business emergency, flying out 8:30. Rain check on shared car service?" Her reply came as he was checking out of the hotel. "No problem. See you in NYC." Benjamin felt a pang of disappointment at the brevity of her response, but there was no time to dwell on it. His driver was already waiting to rush him to the airport. The flight to New York passed in a blur of spreadsheets and conference calls, Benjamin's team briefing him remotely on the client's situation. By the time he landed at LaGuardia, he'd formulated a strategy and arranged an emergency Sunday afternoon meeting at his Manhattan office. It wasn't until evening, exhausted from hours of negotiation and damage control, that Benjamin finally had a moment to himself. The crisis had been averted, the client placated with a personalized investment strategy and reassurances of Benjamin's direct oversight, but the day had vanished in the process. He collapsed onto the sofa in his Upper East Side penthouse, loosening his tie and checking his phone for the first time in hours. There were no messages from Rachel. Fighting back disappointment, he composed a text. "Sorry for the abrupt departure. Client emergency resolved. How was your flight?" The minutes ticked by with no response. Benjamin tried to focus on a financial report, but found himself checking his phone every few minutes. When it finally chimed with a message, he grabbed it perhaps too eagerly. "No worries. Flight was fine. Back to work tomorrow. Busy week ahead preparing for new exhibition." The response felt distant, professional. Benjamin frowned, wondering if he'd misread their connection or if she was simply preoccupied with her own work. He debated his reply, finally opting for directness. "Would you be free for dinner Friday night? I know a place in the West Village you might enjoy." This time the response came more quickly. "Friday could work. 7:30? Perfect. I'll send details midweek. Looking forward to it." Benjamin set his phone aside, feeling both relief and uncertainty. The weekend had created something delicate between them, something he was unaccustomed to navigating. In business, he moved with confidence, always several steps ahead. But in this emerging personal connection with Rachel, he felt off balance, reactive rather than strategic. The week passed in a demanding blur. Benjamin found himself thinking of Rachel at odd moments during board meetings, while reviewing quarterly projections in the back of his car between appointments. He caught himself smiling at the memory of her directness, the way she'd challenged his half-truths, the unexpected kiss before they parted. On Wednesday, he sent her the restaurant details as promised, receiving a brief confirmation in return. The shortness of her texts left him uncertain but still hopeful for Friday. When Friday evening finally arrived, Benjamin found himself unusually nervous as he entered Luca's, a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, known for its authentic Tuscan cuisine and discreet service. He'd chosen it carefully elegant but not ostentatious, intimate without being romantic to the point of presumption. Rachel arrived precisely at 7:30, wearing a simple black dress that looked effortlessly sophisticated. Her hair was down tonight, framing her face in soft waves that caught the candlelight as she approached his table. "Hi," she said, somewhat reserved as she took her seat. "Hi." Benjamin echoed, searching her face for clues to her mood. You look beautiful. Thank you. This is a lovely restaurant. They fell into slightly awkward small talk about the restaurant, the neighborhood, the unseasonably warm weather. Benjamin felt a growing unease. The easy connection they'd found in their college town seemed to have dissipated in the New York air. After they ordered, Benjamin decided to address the tension directly. Rachel, have I done something wrong? You seem distant. She sighed, setting down her water glass. Not wrong, exactly. I've just been thinking about this. She gestured between them. Whatever this is. And? He prompted gently. And I'm not sure it makes sense. She met his eyes directly. Ben, our worlds are completely different. You operate in a stratosphere I can barely comprehend. That didn't seem to bother you last weekend, he observed. Last weekend was like vacation a bubble outside real life. But this is New York, where you're Benjamin Cavanaugh, billionaire investor, and I'm just a museum curator with student loans and a rent-controlled apartment. Benjamin felt a tightening in his chest. First, you're not just anything. And second, I thought we connected as people, not as financial portfolios. We did, Rachel acknowledged. But reality doesn't disappear because of a connection. This morning I Googled you. She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. I know I said I wouldn't, but curiosity got the better of me. And what terrible secrets did the internet reveal? Benjamin asked, trying to keep his tone light despite his growing concern. Nothing terrible, just illuminating. The houses in the Hamptons and Aspen, the yacht, the private jet, the charitable foundation with your name on it. She shook her head slightly. Your world is so far removed from mine, Ben. I can't help wondering what you could possibly see in me beyond novelty. The waiter arrived with their appetizers, creating a momentary pause in the conversation. When he departed, Benjamin leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Is that really what you think? That you're some novelty to me? Rachel shrugged, looking uncomfortable. It's a reasonable conclusion. Men in your position often seek relationships with people who aren't impressed by their wealth. It's refreshing for them, a break from people who want something, but eventually, the worlds collide. That's not what this is, Benjamin insisted, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Rachel, yes, it was refreshing that you didn't know who I was at first. But what made me ask you to dinner, what made me follow you to New York was you, your passion for your work, your directness, your ability to see through pretense. But, no, he interrupted gently. Let me finish. Yes, I have resources you don't. Yes, my daily reality includes things that might seem excessive or foreign to you. But those are circumstances, not who I am. The person you met at that reunion, the one who wanted to have a real conversation, who enjoyed your company, who felt more alive in those few hours than he had in months, that's the real me. Rachel studied him, her expression softening slightly. I want to believe that. Then believe it, Benjamin urged. Give this whatever it is a chance to develop without prejudging where it might go or what obstacles might arise. She was quiet for a moment, absently tracing the rim of her wine glass. I've dated wealthy men before, she finally said. Not in your league, but comfortable. It always ended the same way they wanted arm candy, not a partner with opinions and a demanding career. I'm not them, Benjamin said simply, and I have absolutely no interest in arm candy. I'm surrounded by people who agree with everything I say all day long. The last thing I want is more of that in my personal life. A small smile tugged at Rachel's lips. So you want me to argue with you? I want you to be exactly who you are, Benjamin replied, relieved to see her mood lightening. The woman who called me out on my half-truths and kissed me unexpectedly in a hotel lobby. I did do that, didn't I? Rachel's cheeks flushed slightly. You did. Quite memorably. I'm not usually so forward, she admitted. Something about you just… She trailed off, looking embarrassed. Just what? Benjamin pressed, genuinely curious. Rachel met his eyes. Made me want to take a risk. The tension between them shifted then, transforming from awkwardness to something electric. Their dinner progressed with renewed ease, conversation flowing naturally once more as they shared stories of their respective weeks, discussed books they'd recently read, debated the merits of various New York neighborhoods. By dessert, it felt as though the earlier uncertainty had never existed. Rachel was animated, engaging, challenging his perspectives in ways that made him think differently. Benjamin found himself laughing more than he had in months, captivated by her quick wit and thoughtful insights. When they finally left the restaurant, the October air had turned chilly. Benjamin noticed Rachel shiver slightly and impulsively removed his suit jacket, draping it over her shoulders. Such a gentleman, she teased, but pulled the jacket closer around her. Old habits, he shrugged. Would you like to walk for a bit? The High Line isn't far from here. I'd love that, Rachel agreed. They strolled through the village toward the elevated park, their hands occasionally brushing in a way that sent unexpected currents through Benjamin's arm. At one such contact, he tentatively took her hand, relieved when she interlaced her fingers with his. The High Line was relatively quiet for a Friday night, the cooling weather keeping the usual crowds at bay. They walked slowly amid the carefully curated plantings, the city lights creating a magical backdrop as they talked about everything and nothing. I've been thinking, Rachel said as they paused to look out over the Hudson River, the water reflecting the moonlight in rippling silver. Maybe I was overthinking things earlier. How so? Benjamin asked, turning to face her. The differences between us, they're real, but perhaps not as insurmountable as I made them out to be. She looked up at him. People from different worlds connect all the time, don't they? They do, Benjamin agreed, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. And sometimes those differences provide perspective each person needs. Rachel nodded slowly. I'd like to see where this goes, but I need you to understand something. What's that? I'll never be comfortable with certain aspects of extreme wealth, she said frankly. I've built my career on making art accessible to everyone, not just the privileged few. That matters to me fundamentally. I respect that, Benjamin said. And I'd never expect you to change your values. In fact, your commitment to those principles is part of what I admire about you. Good answer, she smiled, stepping closer to him. One more thing I need to know, this isn't just a passing interest for you. I'm not looking for casual, Ben. Benjamin felt the weight of her words, the seriousness of what she was asking. In his past relationships, he'd always maintained a certain emotional distance, kept one foot out the door. But with Rachel, he realized with sudden clarity he wanted something different. It's not casual for me, he said quietly. I can't predict the future, but I know I want to explore whatever this is between us with real intention. Rachel searched his face in the moonlight, seemingly finding what she needed in his expression. She reached up, her hand gently touching his cheek. And this time Benjamin was prepared when she kissed him. Unlike their first brief kiss, this one lingered, deepened. Benjamin's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as the sounds of the city faded around them. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Rachel's smile held a new warmth. I've wanted to do that again since Sunday, she admitted. Me too, Benjamin confessed, though I was afraid I might have imagined how good the first one was. And the verdict? Even better than I remembered, he smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. They continued their walk, talking and occasionally stopping for more kisses, until the late hour and dropping temperature finally convinced them to head back. Benjamin insisted on seeing Rachel home, calling his driver to take them to Park Slope. Her apartment building was a pre-war brownstone on a tree-lined street, charming and distinctly Brooklyn. Benjamin walked her to her door, reluctant for the evening to end. "Would you like to come in?" Rachel asked, keys in hand. "For coffee or something?" Benjamin was tempted powerfully so, but shook his head. "I'd better not. Early meeting tomorrow. But rain check?" Rachel nodded, looking both disappointed and pleased by his restraint. "Definitely. What about Sunday? There's a photography exhibition at a small gallery in Dumbo I was planning to see. Would you be interested?" "I'd love that," Benjamin said sincerely. "Text me the details?" "I will." She unlocked her door, then turned back to him. "Thank you for tonight, for being patient with my doubts." "Thank you for giving us a chance despite them," Benjamin replied, leaning down for one last kiss, a gentle goodnight that held promise of more to come. As his car drove him back to Manhattan, Benjamin found himself smiling at the city lights, feeling a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. There were complications ahead, certainly. The differences Rachel had identified were real. But for the first time in a long while, Benjamin was eager to navigate those complexities, to build something genuine with someone who challenged and intrigued him in equal measure. The exhibition in Dumbo on Sunday became the first of many shared experiences over the weeks that followed. Their relationship developed with surprising ease, each date revealing new dimensions that deepened their connection. They explored small galleries in Brooklyn, discovered hidden restaurant gems in Queens, attended obscure film screenings in Manhattan, and took long walks through Central Park as autumn painted the leaves in vibrant hues. Benjamin found himself gradually adjusting his typically rigid schedule to make more time for Rachel, delegating tasks he would normally have handled personally. His executive team noticed the change, though only Kelly was bold enough to comment on it during a Monday morning briefing. "You seem different lately, Mr. Cavanaugh," she observed after the others had left the conference room. "More relaxed." Benjamin considered deflecting but opted for honesty with the woman who had efficiently managed his professional life for 5 years. "I've been seeing someone, Kelly. It's significant." Kelly's normally composed expression gave way to genuine surprise. "Well, that's wonderful news, sir. Anyone I might know?" "A curator at the Metropolitan Museum," he replied, unable to suppress a smile. "And no, not someone in the usual circles." "The best ones never are," Kelly said with unexpected wisdom. She hesitated, then added, "I'm happy for you, Mr. Cavanaugh. Truly." For her part, Rachel was gradually becoming more comfortable with Benjamin's world, though she maintained certain boundaries. She refused his offer of a private jet when they took a weekend trip to Chicago to see a special exhibition, insisting on commercial flights. But she accepted without protest when he upgraded them to first class, a compromise that seemed to satisfy them both. They developed routines that bridged their different lifestyles. Sunday brunches at a corner cafe near Rachel's apartment, where Benjamin delighted in the anonymity of being just another New Yorker. Occasional evenings at Benjamin's penthouse, where Rachel slowly grew accustomed to the breathtaking views and the presence of his household staff. 3 months into their relationship, as Christmas approached, Benjamin faced an unexpected challenge. His family's annual holiday gathering in Connecticut coincided with a major gala at the Met, a crucial networking event for Rachel's career. The reasonable solution would be to attend separate events, but Benjamin found himself surprisingly reluctant to spend the holiday apart. "Come with me to Connecticut," he suggested one evening as they sat in his living room, a fire crackling in the marble fireplace. "My parents would love to meet you." Rachel looked up from the exhibition catalog she'd been reviewing. "But your family tradition can include you," he finished for her. "I've never brought anyone home for Christmas before. It would mean a lot to me." She studied him, seeming to weigh the significance of his request. "And the gala?" "We could fly back the next morning," Benjamin proposed. Early enough for you to prepare for the evening event. I'd like to attend with you, if that's all right. You want to go to the museum gala? Rachel sounded skeptical. It will be hours of art talk and donor flattery. I want to support you, Benjamin said simply. And contrary to what you might think, I can be quite charming with potential donors. Rachel laughed at that. I don't doubt your charm, just your interest level in 19th century decorative arts. I'm developing an appreciation, he insisted with a smile. So, is that a yes to both? Rachel set aside her catalog and moved closer to him on the sofa. Meeting the parents is a big step, you know. I'm aware, Benjamin said, his voice more serious. But we've been together for 3 months, and I love you, Rachel. I think I have since that night on the High Line. The words hung between them, the first time either had spoken them aloud. Rachel's eyes widened slightly, a mix of surprise and emotion crossing her face. You don't have to say anything back, Benjamin hastened to add. I just wanted you to understand why this matters to me. Rachel reached for his hand, interlacing their fingers. I love you too, she said softly. It terrifies me sometimes, how much and how quickly. But I do. Benjamin felt a surge of joy unlike anything he'd experienced in business success or financial achievement. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the emotion her words had unleashed. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Rachel smiled up at him. Yes to Connecticut, she said. Yes to meeting your family, and yes to you accompanying me to the gala, though I warn you the director's speeches are notoriously long. I'll manage, Benjamin promised, holding her close. I've sat through 8-hour board meetings. Museum galas can't be worse. Christmas in Connecticut exceeded Benjamin's expectations. His parents' home, a comfortable colonial on 2 acres in Greenwich, was decorated with the same eclectic mix of heirloom ornaments and homemade childhood crafts he remembered from youth. His mother, Margaret, embraced Rachel with immediate warmth, while his father, Robert, displayed his approval through second helpings of food and occasional winks across the dinner table. Benjamin's younger sister, Amanda, her husband, and their 2 children completed the family gathering. By evening, Rachel had been thoroughly incorporated into Cavanaugh family traditions, joining the annual Christmas Eve board game tournament, Monopoly, ironically, which Benjamin always won. Helping to arrange cookies for Santa despite the children being old enough to know better, and accepting a hand-knitted scarf from Margaret with genuine delight. Later, as they prepared for bed in Benjamin's childhood room, his mother having discreetly made up the guest room for show while making it clear she wasn't born yesterday. Rachel sat cross-legged on his bed, surveying the space with amused interest. Economics textbooks, sailing trophies, and, is that a Radiohead poster? She teased, pointing to the wall. Your teenage self contained multitudes. My mother has preserved this room like a museum exhibit, Benjamin groaned, sitting beside her. I keep telling her to redecorate, but she refuses. I think it's sweet, Rachel said, and informative. I now know you went through a very serious bow tie phase. She gestured to a framed prom photo on the dresser. The bow ties were a regrettable experiment, he admitted with a laugh. But did you have a good time today? My family can be a bit enthusiastic. They're wonderful, Rachel said sincerely, especially your mom. She showed me all your baby pictures while you were helping your dad with the lights. She didn't, Benjamin groaned. She absolutely did. You were a very chubby baby. Betrayed by my own mother, he lamented dramatically, pulling Rachel into his arms. But I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. They adore you, by the way. My mother told me so while you were helping Amanda wrap last-minute gifts. The feeling is mutual, Rachel said, resting her head on his shoulder. It's nice to see where you come from to understand the parts of you that existed before the billions. Benjamin kissed the top of her head, feeling a profound contentment. "Merry Christmas, Rachel." "Merry Christmas, Ben," she murmured, tilting her face up for a proper kiss. The Met Gala the following evening presented a stark contrast to the cozy family Christmas, a glittering affair of New York elite in designer evening wear, circulating through the museum's great hall with champagne and calculated conversation. Rachel, elegant in a midnight blue gown borrowed from the Met's costume department, a perk of the job, she'd explained, navigated the event with professional poise, introducing Benjamin to colleagues and key donors. For his part, Benjamin was impressed by Rachel in her professional element, articulate, passionate, and diplomatically persistent in advocating for her department's funding needs. He found himself genuinely engaged in conversations about upcoming exhibitions and restoration projects, seeing the museum through Rachel's eyes rather than simply as another naming opportunity for wealthy patrons. Midway through the evening, Benjamin excused himself briefly, slipping away to the American wing. In a quiet gallery of early American furniture, Rachel's specialty, he made a phone call to the museum's development director, whom he'd met earlier. By the time he rejoined Rachel, he'd arranged for a significant anonymous donation specifically earmarked for educational programming in decorative arts. "Where did you disappear to?" Rachel asked when he returned to her side. "Just wanted to see some of your furniture up close," he replied truthfully, if incompletely. "The craftsmanship is remarkable." Rachel beamed with pleasure at his interest. "Wait until you see the new federal period acquisition arriving next month. The inlay work is extraordinary." Benjamin smiled, storing away the information for a future surprise. "I look forward to it." As midnight approached and the gala began winding down, Rachel found herself cornered by the development director, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "Rachel, I've just received the most amazing news," the woman gushed. "An anonymous donor has pledged $5 million specifically for educational initiatives in your department." $5 million! This will fund those interactive displays you've been proposing for years." Benjamin maintained a carefully neutral expression as Rachel's eyes widened with shock, then narrowed with suspicion as she glanced his way. "That's incredible news, Judith," she managed. "Do we have any idea who the donor might be?" "Completely anonymous," Judith assured her. "But they specifically mentioned your work as the inspiration. You must have made quite an impression on someone tonight." When they finally left the museum, Rachel was uncharacteristically quiet in the car. Benjamin waited, knowing what was coming. "It was you, wasn't it?" she finally asked as they crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. "The anonymous donation." There was no point in denying it. "Yes." Rachel sighed, looking out at the city lights. "Ben, we've talked about this. I need to succeed professionally on my own merits." "And you do," he insisted. "The donation doesn't change that. Your proposals were already brilliant. This just ensures they actually happen instead of sitting in budget limbo for years." "But, Rachel," he interrupted gently, "would you be upset if any other wealthy patron had made the same donation after speaking with you tonight?" "That's different," she protested. "Is it? I was genuinely impressed by your vision for making decorative arts more accessible and engaging for visitors. The fact that I love you doesn't make the donation less legitimate. If anything, it means I understood your passion more deeply than a stranger would." Rachel was quiet for a long moment, considering his perspective. "You should have told me first," she finally said, though her tone had softened. "You're right," Benjamin acknowledged. "I should have. I got caught up in the idea of surprising you. I'm sorry." She turned to look at him, her expression a complex mix of exasperation and affection. "You're impossible sometimes. You know that?" "So I've been told." He smiled, relieved the storm had passed. "Forgiven?" "This time," she conceded. "But we need to establish some boundaries about your financial involvement in my professional sphere." "Fair enough," Benjamin agreed, though I reserve the right to buy whatever you're serving at museum cafes. That earned him a laugh, the tension fully dissipating. Deal. By spring, their relationship had settled into a comfortable rhythm, dividing time between their two very different homes. Benjamin found himself increasingly drawn to the warm clutter of Rachel's Brooklyn apartment bookshelves, overflowing with art volumes, walls covered in an eclectic mix of prints and original works by artist friends, rescued plants thriving on every available surface. His own meticulously designed penthouse, while objectively more impressive, had begun to feel sterile by comparison. One April evening, as they prepared dinner together in Rachel's tiny kitchen, a skill Benjamin had been slowly developing under her patient tutelage, he broached a subject that had been on his mind. "What would you think about us living together?" Rachel paused in the act of chopping herbs, looking up at him with surprise. "Are you proposing we move in together?" "I am," Benjamin confirmed, continuing to stir the risotto that was his assigned task. "We already spend most nights together anyway, alternating between two homes. It would be more efficient." "More efficient," Rachel repeated with amusement. "How romantic." Benjamin laughed, setting down the wooden spoon to face her properly. "Allow me to rephrase. Rachel Thornton, I love waking up beside you every morning. I love the way you alphabetize your books but can never find your keys. I love how you talk to your plants and leave coffee cups in every room. I want to share a home with you, not just nights, but a life." "Better," she approved, her eyes soft. "Much better." "So, what do you think?" Benjamin asked, suddenly nervous despite their months together. Rachel set down her knife, considering. "Where would this shared home be? Your place or mine?" "That's the part I wanted to discuss," Benjamin admitted. "I was thinking neither." "Neither?" Rachel looked confused. "I thought we might look for something new, a place that's ours from the beginning, not one of us moving into the other's established space." Rachel looked intrigued by the idea. "Where were you thinking?" "That's the other part of this conversation," Benjamin said carefully. "I recently heard about a brownstone coming available in Park Slope on Montgomery Place. 4 stories, garden, needs some restoration but structurally sound. It would give us space but keep us in your neighborhood, near your friends." "Ben, brownstones on Montgomery Place cost—" "I know what they cost," he interrupted gently. "And yes, I would be purchasing it. But before you object, I'm not suggesting buying you a home. I'm suggesting creating our home together." Rachel was quiet, processing this. Benjamin knew that financial imbalances remained the most challenging aspect of their relationship. Despite her growing comfort with his wealth, Rachel fiercely maintained her independence, refusing extravagant gifts and insisting on paying her own way when possible. "I don't know," she finally said. "It's a big step." "It is," Benjamin agreed. "And we don't have to decide tonight. But will you at least look at the property with me? It's being shown privately before hitting the market." Rachel nodded slowly. "I'll look. No promises beyond that." "That's all I ask," Benjamin said, returning to the risotto, which had begun to stick to the pan in his inattention. The brownstone viewing the following weekend proved transformative. The moment they stepped into the light-filled parlor with its original moldings and marble fireplace, Benjamin saw Rachel's expression shift from polite interest to genuine excitement. By the time they'd explored the garden-level kitchen, the spacious bedrooms on the upper floors, and the small but charming backyard, she was mentally placing furniture and discussing wall colors. "The 3rd floor could be your home office," she mused as they re-examined rooms, "and that front room on the 2nd floor gets perfect northern light for my painting." "So you like it?" Benjamin asked, already knowing the answer. "It's beautiful," Rachel admitted. "I can see why you were drawn to it." When the real estate agent discreetly gave them space to discuss, Benjamin turned to Rachel. I know the ownership issue concerns you. What if we considered alternatives? What kind of alternatives? Rachel asked cautiously. I could purchase it, but we could draw up a legal agreement giving you equity that increases over time, Benjamin suggested. Or we could form a domestic partnership with clear financial terms. There are ways to address the imbalance that respect your independence. Rachel considered this, running her hand along the carved wooden banister of the main staircase. You've given this a lot of thought. I have, Benjamin acknowledged, because I know it matters to you, which means it matters to me. Let me think about it, Rachel said, but her tone was thoughtful rather than resistant. 2 weeks later, after consultations with her own lawyer and several long discussions, they reached an arrangement that satisfied Rachel's need for independence while acknowledging the reality of their financial situations. Benjamin would purchase the brownstone, but Rachel would contribute proportionally to renovations and monthly expenses, gradually building equity. More importantly, they would make all decisions about the home together. The renovation process brought unexpected delights and predictable challenges. Benjamin, accustomed to delegating such projects entirely, found himself unexpectedly engaged in the details selecting hardware for kitchen cabinets, debating the merits of various wood floors, learning more about period-appropriate restoration than he'd ever imagined necessary. Rachel approached the project with an art curator's eye for detail and authenticity, often rejecting the easiest or most luxurious options in favor of those that preserved the home's historic character. Their different perspectives led to occasional heated debates, but ultimately resulted in a space that reflected both their personalities, elegant yet comfortable, historically respectful, yet practically modern. By late summer, as the renovation neared completion, Benjamin found himself contemplating another significant step. The brownstone project had confirmed what he already knew, that he wanted to build a life with Rachel, not just share a home. On a business trip to London, he visited several jewelry designers before finding what he was looking for, a vintage Art Deco ring featuring an emerald-cut diamond in a platinum setting with delicate sapphire accents. He kept the ring hidden in his office safe, waiting for the right moment. That moment presented itself unexpectedly in September, when they spent their first night in the newly completed brownstone. They'd celebrated with takeout and champagne, sitting on the floor of their empty living room. Furniture delivery was scheduled for the following week, and toasting to new beginnings. After dinner, they wandered through the rooms, admiring finished details and imagining the life they would create in each space. In the master bedroom, where only a mattress on the floor awaited them, Rachel paused by the window overlooking the garden, now bathed in moonlight. I can't believe this is really ours, she said softly. Our home, Benjamin agreed, standing behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. The word our no longer felt foreign on his tongue. When speaking with Rachel, it had become natural, right? Rachel turned in his arms to face him. Thank you for being patient with me through all my concerns and independence issues. Thank you for teaching me the value of compromise, Benjamin returned. I'm not known for it in the business world. So I've heard, Rachel teased. Your reputation for unbending standards precedes you. Only in matters of finance, he assured her. In matters of the heart, I find myself surprisingly flexible. Rachel smiled, leaning up to kiss him softly. That's why I love you. In that moment, surrounded by empty rooms waiting to be filled with their shared life, Benjamin knew the time was right. He stepped back slightly, reaching into his pocket where he'd transferred the ring box earlier that evening. Rachel, he began, his voice suddenly thick with emotion. This past year has been the happiest of my life. Before I met you, I had success, but not fulfillment. You've challenged me, supported me, and loved me not for what I've achieved, but for who I am. Rachel's eyes widened as he lowered himself to one knee, the small velvet box now open in his hand. I want to spend my life with you building this home, creating a family if that's what we decide, facing whatever comes next together. He took a steadying breath. Rachel Thornton, will you marry me? Rachel's hands flew to her mouth, tears filling her eyes as she gazed at the vintage ring. It's beautiful, she whispered. Then, more firmly, yes. Yes, Ben, I'll marry you. Benjamin slipped the ring onto her finger with slightly shaking hands, then rose to his feet to kiss her a kiss that conveyed all the love, hope, and promise he felt for their future together. When they finally broke apart, Rachel examined the ring more closely in the moonlight. Art Deco? She asked with a curator's eye. 1920s from London, Benjamin confirmed. I thought you'd appreciate the historical significance more than something contemporary. It's perfect, she said, looking up at him with shining eyes. You know me so well. I'm still learning, Benjamin said honestly, but I look forward to a lifetime of discoveries. They were married the following spring in the sculpture garden of the Met, an unprecedented venue secured through Rachel's professional connections and, she suspected, though he never confirmed, a substantial donation from Benjamin. The ceremony was intimate family and close friends only, with Rachel's father walking her down an aisle created between classical statues. Benjamin's sister Amanda served as matron of honor, while his college roommate Mark, who had inadvertently revealed his identity at the reunion, stood as best man. Benjamin's parents beamed from the front row, his mother dabbing tears throughout the ceremony, while Rachel's more reserved parents watched with quiet approval. Rachel wore a simple silk sheath dress that echoed the clean lines of her Art Deco engagement ring, her only adornment a pair of antique pearl earrings borrowed from the Met's collection. My something borrowed is actually priceless, she'd joked that morning. Benjamin, watching her approach through the garden, felt a surge of emotion so powerful it momentarily robbed him of breath. This woman, brilliant, passionate, principled, had transformed his life in ways he was still discovering. The success that had once been his primary focus now seemed hollow compared to the joy of building a life with Rachel. Their vows, which they had written themselves, spoke of partnership, growth, and unconditional support. Rachel promised to remind Benjamin of life beyond spreadsheets. He vowed to always value her independence while offering unwavering support. They exchanged plain platinum bands, Rachel insisting that her engagement ring was statement enough, without additional diamonds. The reception was held in the museum's Temple of Dendur, transformed for the evening into an enchanted garden with thousands of white flowers and twinkling lights. As they shared their first dance to a string quartet's rendition of La Vie en Rose, Benjamin held Rachel close, overwhelmed by gratitude. Happy? He murmured against her hair. Completely, she assured him, looking up with eyes that reflected the fairy lights surrounding them. Though I still can't believe we're dancing in the Temple of Dendur. Do you know how many donor events I've organized here? And now you're the star attraction, Benjamin teased. We are, she corrected him, Mr. and Mrs. Cavanaugh. Actually, Benjamin said, twirling her gently, I believe it's Mr. Cavanaugh and Dr. Thornton, according to the place cards you insisted on approving personally. Rachel laughed. Good man, remembering that important detail. I value my life, Benjamin said solemnly, and I know better than to mess with your professional identity. As their first anniversary approached, Benjamin found himself reflecting on the journey that had begun with a chance seating arrangement at a college reunion. Their life together had settled into a rhythm that still surprised him with its richness, mornings sharing coffee in their garden when weather permitted, evenings discussing their days across the dinner table or curled together on their sofa. Rachel continued her work at the Met, recently promoted to department head after the successful launch of an interactive exhibition funded by Benjamin's anonymous donation. Benjamin had gradually restructured Cavanaugh Investments to require less of his direct involvement, delegating more responsibility to his executive team and reducing his work week to allow more time for personal priorities. Together, they had established the Thornton Cavanaugh Foundation, focusing on arts education in underserved communities, a project that combined Rachel's passion for accessibility with Benjamin's business acumen. The foundation had already launched pilot programs in several New York public schools, with plans to expand nationally. For their anniversary, Benjamin arranged a return to where it all began, a weekend trip to their alma mater, timing it to coincide with the 11th reunion of their graduating class. Rachel was delighted by the idea, especially when Benjamin suggested they stay at the same hotel where they'd first reconnected. "Should I pretend not to know you again?" he teased as they checked into the Marriott. "For old times' sake?" "I think that ship has sailed," Rachel laughed, holding up her left hand where her engagement ring and wedding band caught the light. "Unless you think anyone will believe I married a stranger from the reunion." "Stranger things have happened," Benjamin pointed out. "I never planned to attend that reunion, you know. Changed my mind at the last minute." "And I almost skipped it too," Rachel admitted. "Had a museum event cancel unexpectedly, which freed up the weekend. So our entire relationship hinges on a series of coincidences," Benjamin mused as they entered their suite, considerably more luxurious than the standard rooms they'd occupied separately 2 years earlier. "I prefer to think of it as fate," Rachel said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "The universe conspiring to seat a billionaire beside the one woman who didn't care about his bank account." "Who still doesn't?" Benjamin added, kissing her forehead. "Despite my best efforts to spoil you." The reunion that evening was a different experience entirely. This time, Benjamin entered the ballroom openly as himself, his hand entwined with Rachel's. Their marriage had made the alumni newsletter, generating enough buzz that they were immediately approached by former classmates eager to hear their reunion romance story. "So you really had no idea who he was?" one woman asked Rachel incredulously. "None," Rachel confirmed. "He was just a mysteriously vague economics major who refused to give his last name." "In my defense, I did say it was C," Benjamin pointed out. "Yes, very helpful." Rachel rolled her eyes affectionately. "Narrowed it right down to about 1,000 possibilities." As the evening progressed, they found themselves at the same table where they had first sat together. Benjamin pulled out Rachel's chair with a flourish. "Your seat, Dr. Thornton," he said formally. "Though I should warn you, the man beside you is hiding something." "Is he now?" Rachel played along, sitting down. "How intriguing." "Should I be concerned?" "Definitely," Benjamin nodded, taking his own seat. "He's madly in love with you. Has been since you asked to join his table 2 years ago." "Well," Rachel said, leaning closer, "that's convenient, because I happen to be madly in love with him too." Later, as they danced beneath the same blue and gold decorations that had adorned their previous reunion, Benjamin held Rachel close, marveling at how a chance encounter had changed everything. The anonymous man at the reunion had found not just a temporary escape from his identity, but a partner who saw beyond it, who challenged him to be better, who loved him for reasons that had nothing to do with his success or status. "Penny for your thoughts," Rachel murmured, noticing his contemplative expression. "I was just thinking how lucky I am," Benjamin replied honestly, "that of all the tables in that ballroom, you chose mine." "Best decision I ever made," Rachel said, resting her head against his chest as they swayed to the music. "Even if you did lie about being in financial services." "I never lied," Benjamin maintained with a smile. "I just understated the case somewhat." "Semantics, Mr. Cavanaugh." "Details matter, Dr. Thornton." As the music played around them, Benjamin reflected on how thoroughly Rachel had changed his life, not through dramatic upheaval, but through the steady influence of her perspective, her values, her love. The man who had once defined himself primarily through professional achievement now found his greatest joy in simple moments shared with her. He had come to that reunion seeking anonymity, a brief escape from being Benjamin Cavanaugh, billionaire investor. What he had found instead was the freedom to be simply Ben, a man capable of love, vulnerability, and growth. In Rachel's eyes, he had discovered a reflection of himself that had nothing to do with wealth or status, a person worthy of love for qualities he had never fully valued in himself. "Ready to go?" Rachel asked as the song ended. "We have that early hike planned tomorrow." Benjamin nodded, taking her hand as they made their way toward the exit. Unlike their first reunion, when they had parted at her hotel door with uncertainty hanging between them, tonight they would return to their shared suite, to the life they were building together, to a future made richer by their unexpected beginning. As they stepped into the cool night air, Benjamin pulled Rachel close for a kiss that held the warmth of gratitude and the promise of all the days to come. He had stayed anonymous at a college reunion, never expecting the woman beside him would steal his heart. But in losing his heart, he had found himself and a love greater than any success he could have imagined.